You just want to put more addicts in jail for show, instead of treating and helping. Instead, every day they come up with stricter laws and become supervisors like in concentration camps. And most importantly, what about the impunity of people in uniforms or in power? Those who fight against this phenomenon make a living from it. They take addicts and couriers under their protection, cover drug dens and labs, make money from drug trafficking in the area. Why would they stop their own earnings? Haven't you heard about cops turning into drug lords? Otherwise, why do people in uniforms join the dark side? Even in the news, there are stories about former police officers becoming founders of drug networks.
Scoundrels are everywhere, but there are more decent people. We conduct raids, enhance surveillance, have preventive meetings, work on anticipation wherever possible.
So, are you sitting here all honest and upright? Never took bribes during your service, never covered for your superiors, never broke the law? Are you sure you'll never sell out to the criminals?
My subordinates and I have done everything possible to maintain order, to fight against cunning drug dealers like you. We caught you, and we'll catch the rest.
It seems that there are not many competent and non-corrupt people, because on the streets, like mushrooms after rain, drug trade spots emerge.
It's important to pay attention to this. You see a new face popping up in a residential area, an unfamiliar person appearing on the street. Others often approach them, discussing something. If money is still visible in their hands, then you should be very cautious and inform law enforcement. Nowadays, anyone can be a courier distributor. When it comes to retail trade, morning runners, postal couriers, a friendly grandfather with a cart, or a seemingly intellectual guy with glasses resembling an IT specialist could be involved. Even a pleasant woman walking near a playground, school, or daycare center in the evenings. Some family couples with children may be recruited, becoming part of the drug business system. Certainly, more often, couriers are loners, mostly teenagers and adults. Drug dealers of child age and the older generation are very rarely encountered because some are still underdeveloped and others cannot cover the required territory physically.
Of course, in the drug business, they pick couriers who are in their prime so they can last longer and get the job done. It's more efficient for processing orders and so on. What's the point of having a tired old man or a foolish kid?
Regarding the points of drug manufacturing, I can provide additional information. Since the preparation of drugs is accompanied by chemical odors, they try to set up laboratories in inconspicuous places. For example, in an ordinary apartment building, this is more of an exception. Neighbors would quickly notice the aroma coming from the doors of the residence. They often set up in basement spaces. It could be attics where there's no access for random passers by, industrial zones, special warehouses, or workshops. These are the places we monitor more often during raids. Additionally, workers in black labs often lack specific education. They work in unsanitary conditions, creating dangerous synthetic compounds for psychotropic substances.
You don't need to be a professor. They don't check your chemistry diploma there. In the neighborhoods, there are already craftsmen working from handwritten recipes passed down from older generations to the younger ones. Others find recipes and ingredients on the internet and start making drugs. My acquaintance was cooking heroin regularly before he overdosed and died. The smell in his summer house was always like dried fruits, and lots of syringes, test tubes on the table. But not everyone sells from home. Those who deal in larger quantities keep them away. They may stash them far away and, with a certain periodicity, retrieve them for a wholesale deal. If they deal in smaller batches or use themselves, they keep it closer. They can stash it anywhere, anything that allows a person's imagination and experience. In flower pots, burying it in the garden on the plot, storing it in the garage with tools. In the hole in the baseboard, taping it under the refrigerator. In the attic, collecting it in a box with clothes. Under the sink in the kitchen, hiding it in shoes in the hallway, even throwing it into home socks or slippers. Before selling or right after buying, hide it in the mouth, in socks, or in underwear. Users listed all these methods. I personally used some of these methods when injecting and snorting. Of course, No one will put a safe in an open place to keep their drugs. Mostly, neighbors on every street or in the neighborhood know the local drug addict or suspect it. Sometimes they complain to the local police officers who turn a blind eye to the appearance of drugs in the area. It goes without saying that points and couriers continue to work not for free. Then the scales grow. I know people who told me how they were caught by the police patrol. The guys were on the top floor of a high-rise building. Apparently, someone from the entrance snitched. An operational group arrived. One got into the elevator, the other purposely went up the stairs. When they met, the addicts managed to toss the goods into the garbage chute, and the police told them it would be better if they let them inject and gave them cash. In other words, they extort the goods in cash. Such cases happen, can you imagine? People also told stories when they caught a dealer. He was heading home after his shift. They asked him to share his earnings, and they let him go. They say, often those who fight against it end up doing it. To law enforcement, there are many questions on the topic of drugs. I know among former police officers, there are also many who turned into drug criminals. They first fought against it, then they were bribed, or they themselves realized that it's easier and faster to earn in this business than in official employment, and there is a high demand on the streets. People want to buy psychoactive substances.
By the way, individuals from various professions can use drugs. We treated a prosecutor for addiction. There were doctors who became addicted to narcotics and needed help. Undoubtedly, cases of drug addiction among law enforcement and medical professionals are much less common, as they are well aware of the issues related to their professions. In other fields, drugs are more prevalent. Sometimes serious athletes use psychotropics as a kind of doping before important career competitions. Students may consume prohibited substances before exams for a stimulating effect. Writers and musicians, as creative individuals, seek inspiration and entertainment in drugs. Artists and models may take them to enhance productivity due to their often unpredictable schedules, long shifts, flights, and relocations. Ordinary office workers, salespeople, lawyers, sales managers may turn to drugs on a tough workday, motivated by the desire to relax. However, they all make a mistake. Even a one-time use of psychotropic drugs can have a profound impact on the psyche of the user. Of course, individual cases vary. Some people try it once, don't like it, and never return to it. The predisposition of a specific individual to a particular type of drug is also taken into account. However, often after a few injections, a person can already develop an addiction, both on a physical and psychological level. This can become a lifelong illness. Drug addiction over several years often leads to fatal outcomes, while those who survive often face disability and a traumatized psyche.
Usually, they start with the lightest drugs, like weed. Marijuana then serves as a springboard for transitioning to harder drugs. Some prefer the slow ones, like the opiates based on poppy seeds. Relax, even in solitude, a cheap way to get an unwarranted sense of tranquility and joy. They can experience euphoria for hours. Other addicts like the effects of fast-acting substances that rev up the body. In that state, they go to the club, gather in lively groups at parties. The method of use also depends on the surrounding circumstances. If they are in a crowded place, indoors, or on the street, then pills or liquid come into play. In the car in the parking lot, they might snort powder. Even in the office, in their own room, having a plastic card and a writing desk at hand, they often create lines. They inhale during a break or lunchtime snack. At night, in a quiet alley or between garages, they might inject, taking turns. Most well-known drugs can be taken in the form of an injection with a syringe.
This is precisely the most alarming situation when they switch to injections. They start injecting into the veins on their hands. Then, they start disappearing, and the hands become swollen, like boxing gloves. Next come injections into the armpits. Then they move to the legs. Eventually, they only inject in the groin. There, the vein is large, making it difficult to miss. But the injection site never heals. It forms a wound, a so-called shaft. Moreover, many contaminate this wound. Injections are done in unsanitary conditions, neglecting hygiene. The person's legs swell, and the blood circulation process significantly worsens. The appearance of a seasoned drug addict is very grim. Brittle hair, an unhealthy skin tone, often pale face, dark circles under the eyes. Teeth crumble and fall out. The weight changes significantly due to fast fast or slow-acting drugs and the addict's body predisposition. Addicts are most susceptible to diseases such as hepatitis and HIV. The levels of chronic diseases in the stomach, heart, respiratory organs, and other systems sharply increase. The body's immunity is greatly reduced. Any drug is a real poison for the human body with irreversible consequences.
Addicts come in all shapes and sizes. It still depends on finances and living environment. Wealthier older folks might buy cocaine for a party, while poor students often cook heroin.
You are right that the mind of a person using drugs ceases to perceive reality adequately. The boundaries of what is permissible blur. Commonly accepted moral norms take a back seat. The main goal is drugs here and now, and for some, there is such a crazy body breakdown if the dependent misses the next dose. Therefore, the problem of drug addiction is a very complex phenomenon that has spread worldwide. Here, an essential aspect is psychological. Those suffering from drug addiction require serious treatment at a rehabilitation center. First, an examination and detoxification are necessary, involving both medical treatment and psychological assistance. Doctors conduct a comprehensive diagnosis and identify psychological problems, developing individual recovery programs. Drug addiction psychotherapy includes not only working with the patient, but also with their family and close ones. Experienced psychologists and therapists hold discussions, during which they provide recommendations on how to behave to help a loved one in trouble. Psychological assistance to drug addicts helps them take the very first step towards recovery. This moment is truly crucial because the addict needs to acknowledge that they are sick and express a desire to get rid of such dependence. Subsequently, the former addict adapts to new conditions of sober life. Adhering to new rules, the once drug-dependent person becomes a full-fledged member of society and a healthy individual. Moreover, programs for working with drug addicts should function and be adequately supported at the state level. States must prevent and treat drug addiction, conduct rehabilitation for addicts, respecting human rights and considering gender aspects, age characteristics, without discrimination. At the moment, in most countries, there is no comprehensive statistics on drug addicts.
Strangers, significantly older than a child, come to your address and call themselves the child's friends. Such cases have occurred in our operational activities. Always question children about where they met and under what circumstances. Ideally, even install a camera near the entrance to the apartment or house. Conduct periodic cleanings in the premises. Inspect rooms. Syringes, powders, these are all evidence. It's the first alarming sign for any parent. Youth is recruited into the drug business. They are willing to work for relatively small fees, often unaware of the criminal liability for drug trafficking and use. In residential areas, there are several points of manufacturing and distribution. There are fewer in new buildings or fenced residential quarters. After all, there's security, round-the-clock video surveillance, and locks on the gates. Although, even in such security measures, you can find lone couriers. There are those who work only as sellers in online mode, or perform managerial functions, administrators, moderators. They will also face criminal responsibility, and their guilt will be assessed no less than those who hand over the goods directly from hand to hand. It is these pseudo-office white-collar workers who develop portals and forums dedicated to prohibited substances. They manage channels on Telegram about drug themes, communities on the network.
Moreover, the addresses of these Telegram channels are used as showcases. If someone is genuinely interested, they will likely be moved to a private chat, and from there, they switch to another messenger. Communication will happen through Signal or Threema. There, they show more information, provide photos and videos of the product, and request data for the purchase process. Fortunately, major social networks like Facebook conduct effective moderation. They may simply not publish drug-related ads if the automated system detects keywords related to prohibited substances. The robot analyzes images and keywords quite well. These moderation mechanisms may not allow drug-related posts to pass SaaS or may remove the advertisement from the social network within a couple of minutes. But drug traffickers in the network use local slang, alternative names, and replace numbers with letters. The main thing is to convey the general message to the potential buyer about the drug sale. User complaints quickly lead to the blocking of profiles or channels on Instagram. It's nearly impossible to conduct multiple sales or run drug forums through Instagram and Facebook. Only short-lived posts appear, and they are quickly added to the blacklist. Sometimes, they might create a small chat, but as soon as it grows into a large group, it gets blocked with just one complaint. These platforms fall under the jurisdiction of the United States, where there is an active fight against cyber and drug crime online. Social networks typically have a lot of user data, and law enforcement in developed countries reacts harshly. However, closing sites open through third-world countries, with servers in African and Asian countries, in the post-Soviet space, is more challenging. As for messengers, Viber has public channels, but Telegram has the most developed function in this regard. That's why drug dealers can create hundreds of thousands of communities daily on drug-related topics. The support team physically won't be able to handle all the complaints in time. The complexity online is that technical support for the drug business may be provided by programmers and technically savvy specialists. They block one site by domain address or resource name, redirecting users to another web resource. Dealers, manufacturers, wholesale and retail buyers need to communicate online. They discuss available drugs, quantities in stock, and conduct trusted transactions. Since both the seller and the buyer in the drug business are in the illegal realm, their own security system is implemented. There are certain guarantees, including key figures, an administrator with a high reputation on the forum. It's not given to just anyone. There's a specific grading scale that increases after each successful sale or review. If two parties on a drug trading forum haven't worked together before, they conduct transactions through intermediaries. Cryptocurrency funds are sent to a guarantor, a reputable admin. The guarantor waits for confirmation from the buyer. This is similar to how legal marketplaces for ordinary goods operate today. They take a deposit from the buyer, wait for the completion of the transaction, and after the arrival of the goods and buyer confirmation, they unfreeze the funds, allowing the seller to receive them. However, cryptocurrencies are not entirely anonymous. Almost all blockchain transactions are public and transparent. Knowing the wallet number reveals information about the amounts and sources of funds received. Criminals use methods to hide crypto payments through split systems. In this way, money doesn't go directly from one wallet to another. It jumps through the blockchain system, first to hundreds of wallets, then to the next thousands of wallets. In the end, the required amount reaches the seller from the buyer through such a long chain in milliseconds. It's incredibly challenging for an ordinary person to decipher these combinations. It would take years. However, law enforcement creates and develops computing systems that process such suspicious financial movements. As a result, they obtain the necessary data within hours or days.
Very often, the so-called narco network management online sellers are caught during payment processing, since they need to convert funds into real money and withdraw them to bank cards. Upon receiving information about a suspicious payment, personal information about such a user is obtained. If more evidence is needed, external surveillance is established. This makes it easier to identify and document where, what, and with whom the user communicates. Sometimes, even a cautious drug dealer online can be exposed in the offline world. Criminals also interact in society, and the necessary information for apprehension may leak at any moment.
Some hackers and cybersecurity specialists provide support to criminal activities online, receiving monthly financial benefits. They sell their training courses for a fee. There is software being sold for a few $100s that allows hiding and falsifying user computer data. For example, through this software, the network displays Linux instead of the Windows operating system. It changes the actual screen diagonal and device type, as well as computer power characteristics and geographical location. Disposable email addresses are often used to access certain online services, sending an email, registering, receiving a password, and confirmation link. After that, the email is no longer needed and gets deleted. Similarly, with resources that require a mobile phone number for registration, a disposable number is used through web services. This is a kind of shield for criminals, making it challenging to trace them in the online world and detect by law enforcement.
Yes, some criminals have become noticeably more cunning. To work operationally with them, it is necessary to register through drug forums, pretend to be buyers of prohibited substances, and gradually gain trust. This provides more opportunities to analyze a particular character on the forum, identify the real admin involved in drug trafficking, and obtain additional information about products and manufacturers. The history of activity is examined, and all available forum correspondences are reviewed. Details about the profile, native language, and geographical region are considered. When in direct contact with a criminal, there is an opportunity to request additional information, such as the weather, time zone, holiday greetings, or mentions of local time. Discussions about payment may include information about the working hours of banks and stores. Street photos may feature logos of local companies, and apartment interiors may show packaging from local stores. Age and interests are revealed through the analysis of popular artists, movies, and games. Information about current news and TV channels in the region of residence is also gathered. Even details like sunlight in photos and videos are noted, including sunrise, sunset, twilight, and the duration of daylight, indicating the season outside, winter, summer, spring, or fall. Drug dealers plan to make a fortune and then disappear unnoticed with the money. However, the longer they stay in the business, the higher the likelihood of catching each perpetrator profiting from poisoning others. Therefore, everyone involved in the overall drug business structure, from the owner of a marijuana farm to the administration of a drug laboratory producing synthetics, must be held accountable. This includes employees who package drugs, advertisers posting announcements on social media, administrators hiring couriers, and more. Many naively believe that their level of responsibility is low, but criminal responsibility applies to every participant in the drug business. Those promoting marketplaces and forums, even if they do not produce drugs, will face serious problems. Participants in the drug production and distribution chain literally profit from deadly goods. Numerous cases of stabbings under the influence of narcotics are documented, and accidents involving drug addicts are countless. In the quest for a dose, a drug addict can harm themselves and those close to them. This may involve burglary, theft of property for sale, stealing medications from a pharmacy, and violent attacks on people in pursuit of money and valuables for subsequent sale. After all, the main goal of a drug addict is to obtain doses of narcotics.
You are right that the mind of a person using drugs ceases to perceive reality adequately. The boundaries of what is permissible blur. Commonly accepted moral norms take a back seat. The main goal is drugs here and now, and for some, there is such a crazy body breakdown if the dependent misses the next dose. Therefore, the problem of drug addiction is a very complex phenomenon that has spread worldwide. Here, an essential aspect is psychological. Those suffering from drug addiction require serious treatment at a rehabilitation center. First, an examination and detoxification are necessary, involving both medical treatment and psychological assistance. Doctors conduct a comprehensive diagnosis and identify psychological problems, developing individual recovery programs. Drug addiction psychotherapy includes not only working with the patient, but also with their family and close ones. Experienced psychologists and therapists hold discussions, during which they provide recommendations on how to behave to help a loved one in trouble. Psychological assistance to drug addicts helps them take the very first step towards recovery. This moment is truly crucial because the addict needs to acknowledge that they are sick and express a desire to get rid of such dependence. Subsequently, the former addict adapts to new conditions of sober life. Adhering to new rules, the once drug-dependent person becomes a full-fledged member of society and a healthy individual. Moreover, programs for working with drug addicts should function and be adequately supported at the state level. States must prevent and treat drug addiction, conduct rehabilitation for addicts, respecting human rights and considering gender aspects, age characteristics, without discrimination. At the moment, in most countries, there is no comprehensive statistics on drug addicts.
Taking control of this problem is imperative, no doubt. However, the fight should be against drug addiction and the drug business itself. Drugs are produced and sold, and fortunately, there are numerous technological innovations available today. Cameras and drones for surveillance, night vision devices, long-range sound recording devices, real-time satellite maps. International-level cooperation programs are evolving among law enforcement agencies. It's crucial to strengthen the control of drug trafficking from the most problematic regions.
Currently, the focus is on the proliferation of synthetic drugs, cheap and easily marketable. However, traditional types of narcotics have not disappeared. In South America, Colombians have long been involved in cultivating coca, which is later processed into cocaine. Peru and Venezuela also produce cocaine. In Iran, there is active production of opium-containing substances, and cannabis is popular. In Afghanistan, after the national ban on opium poppy cultivation, there has been a shift towards the production of synthetic drugs. Some experts consider the region a major producer of methamphetamine. The Pakistani mafia continues to produce heroin and cocaine. In Asia, Chinese laboratories develop potent synthetic drugs. Thailand offers not only warm beaches and tropical fruits, but also a significant amount of heroin and opium. In Africa, Morocco, with access to the North Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, is considered one of the largest global producers of hashish. The problem extends to financial realities, as many farmers in Afghanistan, Bolivia, multinational state, Colombia, the Lao People's Democratic Republic, Myanmar, Peru, and other countries where narcotic plants are illegally cultivated, lack alternative means of income. Refined drug production remains the simplest and cheapest way for them to earn a living. Drugs are transported between continents by passengers on airplanes and maritime transport. Ports continue to be important points for smuggling narcotics across borders, potential transfer points. Drugs are sent through water and sea routes using container shipments. On land, vehicles, including through underground tunnels, are frequently used between countries, and drugs are transported by trains on railway tracks. Some cross borders on foot, usually in mountainous or swampy areas. Even drones are now used to deliver packages with prohibited items through neighboring settlements. A separate issue is diplomatic mail. Thoroughly inspecting the luggage of politicians, officials, or influential leaders of other states is quite problematic. In some consulates, recruited employees may hide prohibited goods, transporting cargo under the guise of diplomatic transport. High-ranking positions are sometimes added to the group of drug dealers or deal protectors, making it scary to investigate and unravel this knot. Some systems are so complex and multifaceted that they astonish even experienced law enforcement officers when the complete network is discovered. Ordinary citizens or resident foreigners with residency in the desired country or sales region are bribed and added to the chain for selling goods. Inside a country, drug dealers often use local postal services to reach regions. Cunning criminals have learned to disguise goods at customs, sometimes even concealing them as gummy candies and filling electronic cigarettes with hemp. Such cases have been encountered in customs control. By the way, cannabis remains unequivocally the most consumed drug worldwide.
A significant portion of the harm caused by drugs worldwide is attributed to cannabis, partly due to its widespread consumption. Estimates suggest that up to 40% of global substance use disorders are related to cannabis and its derivatives. The world has seen an increase in the prevalence of mental disorders, suicides associated with regular cannabis use, and hospitalizations. According to international reports, about 40% of countries have identified cannabis as the primary cause of drug-related disorders.
In the Netherlands, the European country renowned for tourist-friendly Amsterdam and marijuana production, the focus on synthetic drugs is increasing. Western and Central Europe remains the second largest cocaine market globally. Amphetamine is the second most commonly consumed stimulant in Europe after cocaine. Recent trends indicate a rise in methamphetamine consumption in the region, with Europe remaining the primary consumer market for ecstasy. More than half of the estimated global opioid consumers reside in Asia. In East and Southeast Asia, methamphetamine is the most concerning drug, while Southwest and South Asia are dominated by opioids. East and Southeast Asia have long established ketamine markets for non-medical purposes, particularly opium and heroin. In the Middle East and North Africa, Captagon prevails. North America continues to show a high level of opioid consumption. South and Central America, along with the Caribbean, have the world's highest proportion of individuals seeking narcological assistance due to cocaine use. Higher non-medical consumption of pharmaceutical stimulants is observed in North and South America compared to other regions. These insights are analyzed annually from UN reports. Approximately 90% of the global volume of opioid production occurs in Southwest and Southeast Asia. Africa remains a major region for illegal cocaine trade in West Africa, heroin in East Africa, and cannabis, much of which is produced within the region. Most seized cocaine in Africa is confiscated near the coast. West Africa, in particular, serves as a transit base for cocaine entering Europe from South America. The illegal trade of heroin from Southwest Asia spans all African subregions, with East Africa often serving as the point of entry. From there, heroin is further transported to other markets in Africa and consumer markets in Western and Central Europe. According to statements from drug users themselves, the drug market is shifting to social networks, especially for cannabis, cocaine, and ecstasy. However, new psychoactive substances are still predominantly bought and sold on forums in the darknet. Cocaine markets continue to expand beyond the traditional markets of North America and Western Europe, reaching Africa and Asia. Large quantities of cocaine are transported from Latin America to Europe through West and North Africa. In the East, authorities are vigorously combating the drug problem, which has reached almost epidemic proportions. Jordan has been used as a smuggling transit point, while Saudi Arabia employs the death penalty against drug traffickers. Globally, it is crucial to monitor situations in unstable countries and those in a state of armed conflict. For example, in Ukraine, the number of local synthetic drug laboratories sharply increases in conflict zones. Over the past decade, global cocaine consumption and illegal trafficking have been on the rise, evident in record high production and seizures by law enforcement agencies worldwide.
It's high time for governments to partially legalize drugs. Those suffering from withdrawal or other dependencies won't have to rob and kill on the streets to get a fix, or die from diluted lethal synthetics. When you corner a rat, it might go crazy and attack a person. If addicts are left in distress or hated, they might seek revenge. And for some, getting drugs isn't just a whim, it's a matter of life and death. I personally knew those who, without a job, constantly moved from city to city, where they had no acquaintances or friends, an entirely new place. But they managed to find a few $100s a day to get their fix. Honestly, I don't know how they come up with the funds for their goods.
I think I can guess how. Then they'll have to spend a long time in prison for committing crimes like robbery, theft, or something even worse.
Stories of addiction, the need for treatment, and dosage searches are real and heartbreaking tales from the lives of patients. Perhaps one additional solution to the drug problem could be a partial legalization of certain substances along with a comprehensive program for drug-dependent individuals.
Legalization to some extent would bring a significant portion of the drug trade market out of the shadows. Of course, not the entire market, but definitely some part of it. For those suffering from addiction, there would be no need to go into the darknet, searching online forums for drugs when they can receive doses offline through a government program to support their well-being. Perhaps a confidential online resource could be created by the government, including a database of dependents, registries, prescriptions, and so on, systematizing and automating many processes, partially eliminating the human factor where it is not needed in the work.
The question of legalization needs to be discussed carefully. Moreover, by legalization, governmental structures may mean easing the suffering of the sick, that is, providing drugs in pill form to addicts as treatment, while the addicts themselves believe that legalization will be introduced so that they can freely indulge in synthetic substances. To prevent individuals like this from wandering drugged through the streets, and to ensure that they cannot be prosecuted for it under the law, legalization should not become synonymous with legal drug use and the growth of the drug business. The goal is to prevent them from emerging from the shadows and openly peddling drugs in courtyards, in the mornings near schools, and in the evenings outside clubs, while laws shield their activities and tie the hands of law enforcement. Additional resources and strategies are needed to break the vicious cycle in which drug dealers and other criminals can profit from vulnerable population groups. It is important to set priorities correctly, not just the legalization measures, but also clear control by government agencies. Everything should be carefully planned at the legislative level. After all, combating drug trafficking is indeed a challenging task today, and this problem has not been solved with harsh measures.
Legalization with a controlled usage program to ensure people get help. Individuals struggling with drug addiction should have access to healthcare and social services. Discrimination, stigma, and in some countries, the criminal prosecution of drug addicts force them underground, leading to a rapid increase in new cases of viral hepatitis and HIV infection. This needs to be addressed. Heavy synthetic drugs, for obvious reasons, cannot be allowed for anyone. There can be no talk of legalization in this regard. We want a healthy society, not mentally and physiologically ill individuals. As for light drugs, the situation is different. Addicts will receive medication in medical facilities with official documentation. Those who inject drugs will transition to pills, gradually reducing the dosage and need to a minimum. Depending on the stage of the disease, many can still be saved. Overall, there are millions of drug addicts worldwide. About 250 million people have tried drugs. The number of drug users has increased by 1/4 over 10 years. Mortality rates from all types of drugs, opioids, amphetamines, hallucinogens, cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, are very high, especially between the ages of 12 and 55. The highest number of cases is recorded in the USA. Just imagine the scale. You know that many drug addicts end their lives with immense regret. Some have limbs amputated, organs fail due to tissue decay from prolonged drug use. People in wheelchairs talk about how they would like to start life anew and never take that first dose, to give up snorting powder or swallowing pills. Finally, here are real-life stories. A drug addict with experience, as a result, contracted AIDS. He was in a severe stage of the disease. You know, that room where he practically lives until death. Like some kind of hospital isolation, white walls, a bed. It resembles a stationary hospital with a separate room. So, this guy recorded a farewell message before death, for others arriving for rehabilitation. His words were like this: he sits alone in this room, constantly thinking only about the acquired incurable diagnosis. The pain in his body periodically intensifies and weakens under the influence of painkillers. He realized that only a few days were left. They brought him a snack, placed it by the bed, but he doesn't even feel the taste of food. He practically doesn't distinguish smells. He says that ordinary trivial things from the past, walking in a coniferous forest with a pleasant smell, frying delicious juicy sausages with friends, now, these days are remembered with joy, and it seems that in those moments, he was happy. It's a pity that many novice drug addicts don't understand this until they reach the stage of an incurable disease. Even the first intake of drugs and the subsequent few hours of euphoria can make a person incapacitated, disabled.
Like one experienced addict from my circle used to say, you can't escape your fate, no matter how hard you try.
As a practicing psychotherapist, I would like to add that it's beneficial in life to find other joys. For some, it's relationships with a loved one and, later on, family and children. Others dedicate themselves to success in their careers, rejoicing in achievements in projects and creative self-realization. Some feel the surges of joy in their favorite hobbies and interests, skydiving, motorcycle riding. It's always better to steer clear of drugs and never come into contact with that world.
I'm in favor, on behalf of the entire community of former and current addicts. People are dying in search of a fix or due to the unavailability of the drug when needed. It's sad. Help them, don't kill them.
I think partial legalization would change the existing drug business. There would be less effort online to find substances, as addicts could receive them as free aid from government services. Of course, the registry is confidential, with tables and statistics.
In medical terms, this would be helpful. It would be easier to treat people, having more leverage to influence governmental bodies to address this issue. Then we would have real statistics. Someone could be given a pill instead of a syringe, while another might receive a dosage to maintain and stabilize their condition. An addict could continue a life as close to normal as possible. Medical institutions should be accountable for the medications, specifying who receives what and where.
I think, based on statistics, we might see fewer crimes, so we should consider such initiatives. But we need to severely restrict hard drugs. Our main concern is to ensure that it doesn't lead to impunity for drug dealers if criminal articles for possession or trafficking are abolished. We cannot allow them to use legalization laws as a cover. We should avoid having the scent of cannabis in yards and open drug use at parties. We need to make sure neighbors can still complain after the introduction of permits for narcotic products. What we must not allow is to let psychotropics become as common as cigarettes for the population.
Withdrawal is the most severe experience. Intense cravings, pain in the lower back, joints, muscles, and bones, cramps, weakness with cold sweats, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, sharp abdominal pain, and a runny nose. Sometimes anxiety, fear, hallucinations, and insomnia occur. In heroin and methadone addictions, withdrawal is the most intense and vivid. It comes with severe physical discomfort. To alleviate withdrawal, people usually take another dose. It's painful and frightening. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
The consequences of drug addiction, lives ruined. Sometimes you call relatives or you accidentally meet the close ones of a former patient who refused treatment or left the rehabilitation center. People report that the addict is no longer alive, died immediately from an overdose at the dacha, died of HIV infections from injection stabs. A teenage girl took her own life in psychosis, and sometimes the hearts of the parents of such addicts stopped. These are the most challenging and frightening situations from memories associated with drugs.
In the past, I knew a smart guy, a good one, an IT whiz, to be precise. He was a very promising young man, evolving in the field of computer technology, known for his skills in the online environment. Then he got involved in the drug business and went off the rails. Initially, he flaunted easy money, a new car, and beautiful girlfriends from expensive escort services. As his classmates, we were even slightly envious. Later, we found out that he was managing a drug business group online. A couple of months of wealth, and then criminals killed him. His body has not been found to this day. Only messages on his phone about fear, threats from the criminal world, and so on. He knew too much unnecessary information. It's sad for a smart and hopeful person to be ruined. He wasn't a drug addict himself. He fell for the offer of collaboration for profit, got involved in the black business, became cyber support for criminals in CyberSafe, and then they wiped him out.
Reanimation after knife wounds. That's the most challenging memory related to the drug theme. On Thanksgiving, I received life-threatening stab wounds near the heart when we were seizing a drug lab the day before the holiday. It seemed like a straightforward operation. We stormed the lab with a warehouse, but from the side of an ordinary passerby, it seemed like a simple stabbing. It turned out to be an undercover overseer near the entrance. Despite appearing to be a decent, smiling grandpa with white mustaches and beard, he almost took my life. He supposedly sold spices, seeds, and dried fruits in the yard on the street. He was there every day, pretending to engage in informal trade, keeping an eye on the drug operation.
That belief has entrenched itself since past decades. They say there are no former addicts, implying that they can't be considered normal people after the illness. On top of that, you shouldn't have anything to do with addicts. In my opinion, it's a mindset created to demean this layer of society, reinforcing the idea that addicts should be considered problematic, distrusted even after rehabilitation, condemned, and so on. It's wrong to express it that way. After all, people with diabetes aren't stigmatized like this in society.
Previously, in the information field, including on TV shows, in the news, through newspapers, and other media, a harsh information policy was pursued against these people. They compared drug addicts to the dregs of society, shaping morals. On one hand, they forced people to stay away from such sick or problematic individuals, but on the other hand, it's not very humane in today's civilized world, in an era of developed democratic equal societies, to spread such slogans. From a medical point of view, I can't say I understand this issue.
We must acknowledge that an addict is a sick person. Addicts need treatment, not beating. Many specialists claim that addiction is fundamentally incurable. Hence, among rehabilitation experts, there's the formulation, there are no former addicts. In many cases, this form of dependence is recurrent, but in practice, I would say otherwise. Staged specialized treatment allows a person to get rid of the destructive passion, ultimately returning to a normal life.
I'll elaborate. There used to be a prevailing public opinion that drug addicts should be imprisoned, killed, and suppressed in every possible way, including the most cruel and unjust methods. The phrase, "once a drug addict, always a drug addict," was used as an additional argument. However, we can't impose the death penalty for a girl who took an ecstasy pill at a party with other teenagers, or label her for the rest of her life, because everyone has the right to make mistakes. But if a person has significantly harmed society and deserves criminal responsibility, then they should be sent to prison for a long time. If they pose no serious danger but are ill, they should go to a rehabilitation center. I don't deny that the statement, "once a drug addict, always a drug addict," could be an additional argument in court from the prosecution side. Employers may have a negative view of a potential employee with such a past. An entry into law enforcement and military structures is almost closed to them. And there could be a stigma for life, because a person with a history of drug addiction is potentially seen as more likely to commit crimes than anyone else. And in a place where a robbery, theft, or murder occurred, law enforcement will be wary of a former drug addict, even if 20 other people were present at the potential crime scene. A former drug addict, even if reformed, will be checked for involvement in the crime among the first suspects by investigators. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Although, let me tell you another interesting thought in secret, although it's better not to voice it. Do you know that it's difficult for undercover agents to prove their loyalty to the criminal world during special operations? It's true. But conventionally, in our environment, it is considered that police, FBI, CIA agents do not use drugs while behind enemy lines on a mission, even at drug parties in the presence of mafia bosses being hunted. And accordingly, it is not customary to hold them accountable for such crimes or disclose such service violations to the public. In a criminal lair with a bunch of armed people who may be suspicious of you, considering whether you're their person or an undercover operative, it's hard to refuse a pill during a shared meal. This is my opinion, but here, the threat to life or the importance of information obtained by a spy plays a more crucial role. Could a special agent, embedded in a gang, who actively fights drug crime, try drugs on a mission, working in the criminal environment among addicts and dealers? Would he have to do it, or could the criminals force him? Let's leave questions of this nature aside. We won't consider and analyze these situations. Whether to consider someone who tried drugs once as a drug addict or someone who smoked a forbidden psychotropic substance a couple of times under duress by special service agents. Many factors need to be taken into account. Ask the medical professional. professionals. You see, it's not that simple. With established addiction and regular doses, it's a different story. But what about someone who has been in the drug scene for a decade? After serving a prison sentence, where did the addiction go? So, the statement, once a drug addict, always a drug addict, is still somewhat ambiguous, at least for me, but everyone interprets it differently, depending on the situation and context that has arisen.
Gifts, expensive watches.
Manage stress? In a bar, not with drugs anymore.
Spend time with kids.
I go on a journey to gather strength.
Work.
Sobriety.
Family.
Service in the church.
Quit smoking cigarettes.
Head a relevant ministry.
Pay for kids' prestigious college.
To see Paris.
Wouldn't change anything. Everything suits me.
Fear nothing.
Recommended to keep moving forward constantly.
Don't drop out of school for the sake of the back alley.